Certainly. All right, we are live once again. We are back. We are back. Just a little pause in transmission there, but I'm happy to welcome Regina back again to the Team Racine YouTube channel. Now, we were in the middle of the conversation about who reached out and who, has not reached out, during these times, as people of color, we are going through some really tough times. And there has been a lot of, there's been a lot going on, right? And there's been a lot. And so I was making the point that my cousin, he grew up in Atlanta and he has a lot of white friends. And so while the protests and everything were going on last year, he realized who reached out to him and who didn't. And with someone with, so many white friends, he thought that, a lot of them would have reached out. And that was certainly not really the case. And so he had to have a real conversation with quite a few of them, about what it means to actually be an ally, right. What solidarity actually looks like. And I know that for many people of color, this has been a moment for them to really assess some friendships and relationships when it comes, to that, and to see who really is there for you when it really matters. So you bringing up that point was very interesting to me because, that reminded me of my cousin a lot.
Yeah.
Certainly so. And so you do writing and directing as well. And for me, that's so important because we like to see stories being produced from people with very unique perspectives. Talk to me a little bit about what it's been like writing, directing, producing, creating, within this space.
Yeah. I have to be honest, these are things that I never would have thought I could do prior to the pandemic. But, when the pandemic happened and in-person theater changed and the stories that I was telling, we were working online and via Zoom, it made me realize that there were other ways in which I could participate in the creation of theater and in storytelling, and that it's kind of, it's understandable why I was afraid, because I was educated in a way that like we were siloed. We were told like, stay in your lane. Like you're not a director, especially for an Asian woman. Like I never saw any Asian women being directors. Do you know what I'm saying? Like there were not many Asian women who were writers. So I thought if I could succeed as an actor, that was already a lot. And then there was also that other fear, which is a much deeper fear as someone who doesn't see herself represented in a world, and I'm constantly told to minimize myself and my voice. I just didn't think that my story would be interesting or important. I didn't know why anyone would care. And I often thought, who am I to tell my story? Like, who do I think I am? Like, and we live in a world that makes us question that. Whereas, like, how many cis het white men not only write their experience, but decide they can write a story about Asian women or Black men? They never think, what right do they have? Like,
certainly,
they have every right.
I identify with that so much because growing up, I've always been writing, and even now I'm writing constantly. But I used to think when I was younger that the stories that I would tell, if I ever wanted them to be commercially successful, if I ever wanted anyone to pick this up, that I would have to change the main character to be, like a white person, like a white boy, I always thought that I would probably have to do that. They would probably have to be straight. They would probably have to, all these different things to make it commercial. And I am thankful for the representation that I have seen from others that makes me now know that I don't have to do that. There's this because I'm Jamaican, and there's this Jamaican writer, Marlon, and he won the Man Booker Award for his book and everything, and commercially successful. And it was when I saw that I was like, I don't need to whitewash my stories for anyone. It just needs to be what it is, and it will be for whomever it is for. You know what I mean? It will be for whomever it is for. And that's really the way we have to go about our storytelling, because if not for us, if not for you, if not for me, if not for the, you know, myriad of people that are telling their stories, then there's no representation, and there's no one for others to look up to, for them to know that, you know, we can do it as well. Our stories matter. And, you know, because we've heard the stories from other people for many years, over and over and over again, you know.
Exactly.
And so getting perspectives from those who we don't see all the time is certainly really, really, really important. So important. Certainly.
It is. It's very, very important. It's been very liberating for me in this past year to write a play, to write a couple of plays, and they're short and they're not finished. And I'm still like on the journey that every artist, like whenever you're new at something, like it's very clunky and it's a learning process, but just even hearing the words spoken by actors, words that I wrote, was an unbelievably liberating experience, and very and just directing and like telling myself that I can't do these things, and then allowing myself the grace to understand why I told myself that, like, you know, the things that we did to survive in the system, and stepping into liberation fearlessly. It's very new for me. And I want to write more, and I'm still learning how to like commit to doing that. But I hope to have a play written sometime soon. And I'm no longer like ashamed of it, you know?
Yeah, certainly. Now, speaking about the stage, how has that been? Like, you know, within the past year, you know, the pandemic and everything, what has that been like?
So first I want to say that I have been very fortunate to have worked throughout the majority of this pandemic, virtually, and then back in the spring, I did a one-person show with a full rock band called We're Gonna Die. So I've had both virtual experience, and then I've also had like live in-person experience with a full rehearsal process, but with like social distancing, and like Roundhouse made sure we were tested every other day, and that like by the end when we were filming this production, we were in a bubble. So like what's changed is that it's very much centered on, like, especially with Paige Hernandez, who is my director and who is like brilliant. If you ever have the opportunity to see her work as a director, as a performer, as a writer, you should. She's brilliant, but she's very focused on humanity and like witnessing and supporting the humanity of everybody in the room. So safety was first. Not taking on any trauma from the storytelling was at the center of it. And just giving everybody support. So that's a shift that I feel happening in this industry over the past 18 months that most theaters have been shut down. There have been a lot of conversations about equal pay, racial diversity, representation in terms of like how are you supporting trans actors? How are you supporting differently abled actors? How are you supporting anybody who comes into the theater space, whether they're audience members or theater practitioners, and supporting who they are as a whole person? So that for me as a parent, I advocate for, like what kind of childcare can you support if I have any issues, and talking about like these long rehearsal hours we used to have. We used to have to work 6 days a week. Roundhouse shortened the schedule to be 5 days a week and gave me a weekend day off. Like it was unheard of to be off on a Sunday, which meant I was never at home with my kids on the weekends, So there are a lot of things that are changing structurally within the institution of theater that this pandemic has allowed to illuminate, like the inequities of the institution. And we're starting to see which theaters are actually incorporating what the community has said versus theaters who are trying to plow forward and do the same thing that they were doing pre-pandemic. And that, I hope, is a change that continues to take place, that artists and contractors like myself feel comfortable advocating for what they need, and leveling out the power dynamic, because these theaters, these institutions are just buildings.
Yes.
They're nothing without the artists and the stories that they're asking to come in and expose themselves, not just to COVID, but to the inequities of the institution. So that's starting to change. The fact that Roundhouse, this play that I did, didn't dictate a Filipina, the fact that they embraced my ethnicity and allowed me to enliven that as part of the storytelling, as part of me being just a human being telling a universal story, versus erasing that, was groundbreaking for me. Like, I've never actually played a Filipina on stage.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. And like, that's what I hope changes someday, that like somebody can ask for a Filipina and ask for me to speak in my mother's native tongue, and, you know, like, and allow me to be proud of who I am as a whole person, in a way that I've had to erase the majority of the time that I've been performing. I'm seeing those changes happen too. I'm seeing changes in programming, and I'm seeing changes in how artists advocate for themselves.
Love it.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. I mean, you even see it in film and television. Like, for the first time ever, I'm seeing Asian stories being represented in ways that
I mean, Chloe Zhao just won Best Picture for Nomadland. So
right,
you know,
right, exactly. And like seeing that, I mean, yes. And this is another question. It's like, do Asian artists have to tell Asian stories? The fact that she was hired to tell a story about the Midwest of America.
I mean,
you know, because usually Asian directors are only allowed to tell Asian stories.
That is true. That is true.
So that's groundbreaking in its own way.
And, you know, now she's directing Marvel Studios' Eternals, which they just released their new pictures today. I just read an interview with her maybe an hour before this interview, and she was just talking about, you know, having all the characters there overlooking the cliff and just being in that moment, directing like such a huge thing, you know. So it's really marvelous to see what's happening within, you know, the world of art and entertainment when it comes to that. And I just want more artists to put themselves out there, you know, speak up and, you know, just deliver, just create and, you know, tell stories. That's really my favorite thing. So before I let you go, Regina, how can people follow you and keep up with whatever you are doing on social media and everything else?
I am on Instagram, regina.r.aquino, on Insta. That's me at the rally. And my speech is it should be on my website. It might not be, but I'm going to put it on there now, which is reginaakino.com. I also have an actor page on Facebook, which is Regina R. Aquino. But yeah, it's Regina R. Aquino. The R is for my grandmother's name. I was named after her. Awesome. And I would love, and then I'm on Twitter as well. I believe it's Ave Regina Aquino on Twitter. So if you wanted to follow me, I would love that. I'd love to continue a conversation about representation and how great it is that Gemma Chan is like the central character of the Eternals. And
I know. Can you believe?
I know she's in a movie with Angelina Jolie, and she is the central woman.
And that's the central woman. I mean,
and they didn't take a woman of color and paint her a different color.
Yes, they did
make
not.
Her blue. They didn't make her green. They didn't give her antennas. They allowed her to be Asian fully. Like that is progress. That is progress. So, let's talk about it. Find me on Twitter. Let's talk about these things.
Love it. Thank you so much for joining me today. It has been such a pleasure having this chat with you, and I wish you all the best in all your endeavors. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much to you and Team Racine. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate your support.
Thank you so much. And to our viewers, thank you for watching. Bye.
Bye.